listen? Can we listen? What are we missing? What are we missing? What in this system made us blind? This can't be more than in our mind. Look at the kids and you will find that it's time to rewind. We must open up our eyes.
Hey there, this is Jo Delamore, and I'm talking to you from a nice little shady spot. Got out of the sun for a moment in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And my daughter and I just drove across almost the whole country. We left our little home in southern Colorado and drove for 3 days straight across the country. And along the way we had lots of interesting conversations, as we tend to do when we're spending a lot of time together. And I wanted to share some thoughts from one of them with you today. As we started to head out into eastern Colorado and into Nebraska, we started to see lots of big buildings along, kind of set back from the highway along the way. And she kept on asking, is that a school or a prison? She couldn't tell, because they look so similar, strangely enough. And because these big, gray buildings, these big concrete buildings, are something that she's not really used to seeing, they struck her as interesting. So it got us talking about prisons and the prison system and why it's so full and what's going on with, if something's illegal, why do people do it? And we started to talk about our culture and the cultural constructs that support the society that we live in. Of course, she's almost 11 and she loves getting into it. She has like a million questions and is so bright and intelligent, and when we start to talk about these types of things, it goes real deep, real fast. So we were talking about the cultural suppression that leads to deviant behavior. And that's kind of a little bit of an obscure concept, but such an important one, and something that I want to just talk with you about today so that we kind of get that stirring in our minds, because it was so interesting as Luna started to think about all of this. But this kind of idea that something is wrong or bad and should therefore be pushed away and extricated from our experience as quickly and as efficiently as possible actually causes it to come back on us in such intense and destructive ways. And so this is something that we see in our culture. Whenever we create a new war, whether it's the war on terrorism or the war on cancer or the war on drugs or any of these kinds of aggressive attack, pushing it out kind of ventures, then what we see and what we can clearly see in the statistics over the time is that we have an increase in that activity. We have more cancer, we have more drug trafficking and use and issues, real serious drug issues. We have more terrorism and fear of terrorism and, trouble around all of that. And so this is a cultural example of something that happens internally for each one of us, something that is on a smaller scale happening in our lives when we say, we don't want this character trait, or we don't want this type of experience, and we start to push things out and to make them taboo. Then they wind up turning around and coming back on us in devious ways, in destructive ways, and they have so much more control over us at that point than if we were to embrace them. And so on the cultural level, we see that as we've suppressed any kind of, as our puritanical roots suppressed the sexual needs and experiences that are just kind of normal human experiences, as we push those away and suppress that, we saw all of this sex crime. We saw all of this deviant sexual activity and behavior. As we've pushed away our natural human need for, or curiosity for altered states and for, working with the plants and being with that kind of change in reality that happens when we work with different plants, as we've pushed that away and made that taboo, then we see the drug culture rising and this chemical drugs and drug crime and all of the, deviant behavior that is associated with our drug problem. As we pushed away the kind of relationship with our body and the connection with our body around how to take care of our bodies and what our bodies are communicating with us when they have certain symptoms, then we've seen the rise in all of these really serious diseases, much more serious than we've experienced in our recent history. So that's just I don't know where I want to really go with that, but I just want to kind of bring that conversation up and start to look at those issues that we're having, the really serious issues that we're having either culturally, societally, or personally. Do they have to do with suppression? Is there something at the root of that problem that was denied or suppressed or pushed away to some extent that caused it to turn around and become a real issue for us? So that's what I have to share with you today, and the fruits of a beautiful conversation, and it was a several hour long conversation with my almost 11-year-old, who is brilliant and bright and precocious, as we were driving through the countryside and seeing the factory farms and the GMO cornfields and the prisons and factories and schools that look like prisons and strip malls along the way. We're seeing signs and symptoms of cultural suppression, of that kind of denial of our real human needs. And I ask you to look for that in your own life, around in the culture that you're engaged in, that's around you, in the society that we live in, and also within, in your own life, in your family, in your home. Wherever there is a real issue, a real challenge like that, then there may be at the root of it something that's been denied that could instead be embraced. So many blessings. I hope that this has been interesting, at least, if not helpful. And we'll talk soon. Peace.
'Cause we're a diverse society, walking down this